So it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 and see how this phone holds up in 2023. Now, I love the Note 8. I think it was probably one of the best phones Samsung's made, at least at that moment. But I will definitely tell you, I think this phone has aged, gracefully, which is nice, but it might not necessarily be worth it. So I will leave some other phones I would recommend buying this year beyond this device. If you want to pick them up, you can get them linked in the description and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the Samsung Galaxy Note 8, this device on the front had a 6.3-inch Super AMOLED display. Now, what I'll definitely tell you is this was probably one of the best selling features of this specific phone. But you have to remember where Samsung was pretty much coming from with this device. This phone came out in 2017, which is actually, about 6 years ago, which is crazy. This phone does not look like a 6-year-old device. But you have to remember the phone right before this, the Galaxy Note 7, was that super controversial device. I mean, it ended up exploding everywhere. They had to cancel it. Probably one of the biggest drops ever of any phone I've ever seen. Like the fact that it was supported and it was hyped up and then it just got discontinued from a major manufacturer is pretty insane. It's almost like the hidden phone, because nobody really wants to buy it anymore. So this phone was kind of on the heels of that, fixing everything that was wrong with that device. And I think they did a great job. I think they did a tremendous job with this phone. I think software-wise they could have done it a little bit better. But this panel on the front, I still think looks very good. It curved on the sides. You had a little bit of bezel on the top and bottom. But, like I said, even in this day and age, it is still a pretty decent looking phone. And that is one thing that I keep looking at. Whenever I pick up this phone and I feel it, man, that display looks so beautiful. Now, on top of that, the I/O on this phone was also insane. So you had that USB-C port at the bottom, which doubled with Samsung DeX. So you had that capability of actually plugging this thing into a different monitor and getting that, desktop experience, which was so cool. You also had S Pen support. So you could just go ahead and then plug in that S Pen on this device. So you could actually have like a stylus on this device too, which was so cool. And that's been there since the Note lineup. Now the Note lineup is now gone and it's kind of been replaced with the Ultra lineup. But still, I think that this was a great phone and I really like the S Pen. And you also had that microSD card slot as well. So you could easily just go ahead and then, plug in more storage if you want to. And that is always going to be one of my favorite features to have. I wish more phone manufacturers would do that. I'm not too sure if the next Samsung is going to bring it, but we did have it on this device, which was beautiful. And on the back, we do have that glass back, which is awesome. It feels very premium. It looks so good still. And you had that dual camera setup up top. Now, we did have wireless charging on this phone as well, which is great. The build quality was awesome. It still looks like a very premium phone. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised, if a lot of people would agree with this, that if Samsung were to kind of make a revised Note 8, it's the same exact hardware on the outside, but inside maybe it brings like an 8 Gen 1 chipset. I think a lot of people would buy a phone like that, to be honest, because this thing still looks beautiful with that microSD card slot. So I would say on the outside, definitely gets a thumbs up for me without a doubt. Now on the camera side, like I mentioned, this phone had a dual camera setup. So we had a 12 megapixel wide angle lens, then a 12 megapixel telephoto lens. Then we also had an 8 megapixel wide angle camera on the front. Now I will tell you this camera was pretty decent. I think it was definitely a step up. You have to remember the Galaxy S8 came out this year as well. So it was better than the Galaxy S8's camera. I think it was better than pretty much every other Note phone that ever came out before that. And I think that's a great thing. I think with this type of phone, it is a really decent camera. I will say nowadays it isn't that great, but I remember when this phone came out in 2017 and I was looking at it and I saw a lot of people reviewing this phone and I was pretty shocked about the camera quality. I've always been jealous of a lot of Samsung features. I primarily use an iPhone. I use Samsung all the time too now, but the camera inside of it was just so good. It had so many features inside. But I found out that iPhones typically age a little bit better in their camera department than like Samsung's. I feel like there can be a lot of hardware issues and graininess that happens more so with some Samsung phones than some older iPhones. But I still think with, in this case, the Samsung Galaxy Note 8 camera was great. I think they did a tremendous job when it first came out. And I do think even in this day and age, it definitely gets a thumbs up for me. So in the camera side, although it's not better than any other camera that's came out after this, I think for how old this phone is and for the features that it has, it's pretty decent. It is missing 4K at 60 on the front and back. It's missing an ultra-wide camera. And it definitely doesn't have as many features as the latest Samsung phones. But I still think it's okay and it gets the job done for sure. So in terms of that kind of covers it up there. Now in the software and the longevity portion, this is quite obviously probably the worst area of this phone. So it started off with Android 7.1.1, which may have been like the Samsung Experience software. We did end up getting that One UI update with this phone. Now there's some pretty big things to keep in mind here. For one, One UI was great. I'm really surprised how well One UI has aged. I think that's the best way to put it. But the problem was that One UI 1 wasn't, it was a good upgrade, but One UI 2 brought a lot of cool upgrades with it, including the full-on gesture design. That in and of itself, if Samsung were to go ahead and bring just one more version of software to this phone, I think that would have changed a lot of people's opinion on this device. Unfortunately, Samsung did not do that, and that is the one thing that where I just feel like the Galaxy S8 and Galaxy, and Galaxy Note 8 could have easily supported that version of software, and I would have loved to have seen it, But in this day and age, we are kind of stuck in this kind of weird situation where the hardware of this phone is so good, but the software of this phone just isn't that good at all. So what do we do? Do you go and upgrade the hardware? But do you buy this phone, for the hardware, but the software is outdated? Or do you not buy this phone, but the hardware is still good? It's just one of those weird things. And that's kind of where we're going to be at for a while until Samsung supports their phones a longer period of time, which they already are doing. But I do feel like Google and Samsung could do just 1 year better. And I think that would be awesome. So I would say in this case, software longevity is probably the reason not to buy this phone. But the performance of this phone is actually not really as bad as you may think. It has that Qualcomm Snapdragon 835 chipset inside with 6 gigs of RAM inside of it. And I will tell you, I actually used this phone quite a bit last year in 2022 when I was going through and just, doing some basic performance tests on my third channel. And I was surprised about how well this phone was doing in the gaming department. So basic things, like opening apps and whatever, it's going to be fine, that kind of stuff, but it's still going to be kind of slow. I think the lack of gestures is the thing that's going to throw me off the most. But the weirdest thing was actually with the gaming side. I feel like it could still actually handle quite a bit of games that I threw at it. I did play Genshin Impact on this thing. I played, I think, Call of Duty Mobile on this thing as well at varying graphics, and it was pretty decent. Now, it wouldn't be like the first phone I would recommend for, gaming and whatnot, but I think it kind of got the job done, and it was very, very weird. I've actually seen a lot of YouTubers actually go through and use an older phone like this and do some emulation gaming on, I think, video game emulation on the Reddit, on the subreddit. I think the subreddit video game emulation on Android or something like that. A lot of people are using the same chipset still, which I'm kind of surprised about. So although I wouldn't really recommend buying this phone anymore, you do actually still have kind of a community behind this phone using it for, performance. So I think it's very interesting. It's still a slow performing phone compared to phones nowadays, but I guess the job done, 3300 milliamp hour battery inside of it as well, which wasn't that great, but you do have wireless charging, but it was good when it first came out, which is the crazy thing. So in terms of this whole entire video, and to kind of sum it up, is the Note 8 still worth it in 2023? I would probably say no. I wouldn't buy this phone anymore, and that's not a knock to the Note 8. I think this phone was very impactful. It brought a lot to the table, but you have to remember that with this type of device, we are kind of stuck in, it's almost like a time capsule. This phone's not getting any more software updates, so there's no point in getting it since it's pretty much outdated. I will say with the next version, with the Note 9, that one had a little bit of a better throughput in front of it. The Note 10 is probably the lowest Samsung Galaxy phone I'd recommend buying anymore, or Samsung Galaxy Note phone. So the choice is yours, but I probably would not buy the Note 8 anymore, but it's still very cool. So that pretty much covers it up. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.